boy. It's me.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about some vocational rehabilitation. And I think it kind of lines up to, psychedelics, like a good segue into it, because if you're in that recovery stage and you're trying to cleanse your body and reboot, right, maybe you'll see different things and you'll be ready for that next step in employment or, just moving on with your life. Fellas, thank you for coming today. Lou.
You are missed.
R.I.P. Lou. We're going to imagine him being caught in the sauna over here, the personal sauna. Lou couldn't be with us today.
Shaggy's here to take your spot.
We've been on a 3-week layoff. How you guys feeling?
Feeling good. Glad to be back.
Check-ins. We got our check-ins.
Definitely glad to be back. Had some tough cases the other day, but, coming in here, hanging out with you guys is always a pleasure. So just kind of resetting. Got Cesar Chavez Day tomorrow, so just finished work, got the day off, chilling with you, homies. So I'm feeling better right now.
I mean, when you come in the house, bro, you fucking screaming and hollering like...
Yeah, he came here just trying to get all aggressive on us. Or we were just...
Yo, say that for Steph, baby.
That movie is old. You talking about
I know. He's like, y'all, what the fuck y'all doing? He's like, I know it's based on a true story. Y'all be watching that old shit.
Y'all acting like y'all barely seen this American
God, still in
Sniper
black
out
and
here.
white. Come on, man.
They acting like shh,
Alfred
I ain't
Hitchcock?
seen this shit yet. Shh, like, oh, I'm watching American Sniper.
Doesn't matter, John.
It's fucking old as shit.
Movie is a movie. You come in interrupting.
And we already knew today
Damn.
was gonna be interrupting with the episode, and we still stopping it again.
Did Jorge beat you again to the house?
I did.
But you know who didn't? Lou. R.I.P. Lou.
No, he did not.
Lou.
How we doing, Maya?
Looks good.
Any good news that we need to know about? Follow-ups?
That's right.
Oh, that your boy is trying to bump himself up to 6 figures. Oh,
Wait. What?
Is that the conversation or
That's
what?
the conversation.
We talking about vocational training. What's gonna be your vocation coming up, brother?
Your boy's getting bumped up to Kaiser. If I don't fuck anything up between now and June, fuck.
So everything came back solid.
Everything came back copacetic.
That's right. That's right.
Because was there any doubt? No doubt.
I don't know. Was there? What's in my knowledge?
We're doing it right here at Therapy House.
Awesome, dude. That's what's dope.
Hell yeah, man. You gotta believe in yourself, man, and we proud of you, brother.
This is next chapter, man. I'm excited for you.
Stepping up, doing big things,
Gotta elevate your lifestyle. You gotta keep it up.
Man.
I guess we can then afford this house again. We're good.
This Therapy House is still alive.
Oh.
It'll just be J and J House, not
This would
3J.
be a J and J.
Johnson.
Johnson.
For sure.
Okay. So this Therapy House is still Therapy House. Is that
Maybe
what I'm
we'll
hearing?
see.
It's J squared therapy.
J
J squared.
J squared therapy.
shit.
We can make shirts.
We coming to J. You coming to J squared, son.
Okay.
I need to hold your equipment. I gotta pay that J square money. That J square fee.
Hey, that
what I'm
actually might
saying?
be something.
That garage fee.
Garage fee.
Get all the remedy
Hey, John, you
radio
can always
shit out.
come back. We just don't need. You can pay for the living room.
All right, fellas. Well, thanks guys for coming. Definitely wanted to expand our kind of our topics on therapy in general and how it can go across a lot of environment platforms and settings. And so you guys and Lou obviously have a little more connection in terms of what you guys actually do. Mine is more like in later stages of therapy. Though we work on behavior, we work on just kind of changing the mindset of things. And but I'm interested to know, as you guys are therapists, how is employment or vocational training, or how do you guys implement that into changed behavior with your clients? I mean, most of you, if not all of you, have K through 12 clients, high school setting, most likely. So, in that process, in those stages, how does employment or vocational training changed behavior come into your therapy? Any of you can start off.
Well, I definitely have had some cases where I use a lot of the existential approach. And so there's an exploration of values and meaning and kind of like future planning, you know, especially if somebody's depressed. A lot of times, you know, especially if they're entering that like 17-year-old, 18-year-old like age in intensive outpatient where I work, sometimes it's the right time to start talking about that. I got a guy who wants to just graduate high school, and that's been his goal. He realizes that, you know, he messed up in earlier years, and he's just trying to graduate at this point, and then go into community college, you know, to try to like, you know, better himself. And he's just right there, dude. Like he's willing to use a calendar. He's willing to use notifications. Like he's starting to learn independent living skills. It's dope, man. Especially when you can bring kind of like that employment side to it. Then with other people for like a motivator, right? That always comes up too. Like what do they see themselves as in the future? I think it comes up a lot. Obviously not when you working with those like little kids, right? Like, you know, 8-year-old, 9-year-old that you're visiting at school for tantruming or stuff like that. Vocational one doesn't come up, but for some of the existential work in the teenage years, comes up a lot.
And I think there's also something worth saying when it comes to how do you approach that at the high school level, right? There's a certain, I would say, traditional ladder, right, that you climb in the education system. You graduate from high school, you essentially try to get an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, right? And you're trying to kind of climb that, take that step forward. But you know, when I think of a like vocational trainer or even something along those lines, it is kind of like just trying to dive in and grab those just like hands-on experience in a job that you have, right? And a lot of that can sometimes be misinterpreted as like not wanting to go to college or like not really thinking that you're not, or sort of the stigma of not going to college, right? And just jumping into a trade. I had a client that they were going through some adjustment problems, you know, but their meaning, their future goals were around being a mechanic and loving cars. You know, he realized if anything, vocational training was the way to go, and that's where I linked them to, because you know, and I had a conversation with their caregivers about what that meant to the client and how that was contributing to his goals and his behavior, because there was this pressure to want to graduate and get a career in college. And that was creating a lot of anxiety, a lot of sort of uncertainty with his values. Because of that, sometimes he would avoid maybe not going to class. Sometimes he just wouldn't want to focus on turning in his grades. And yeah, you have the pandemic going on and you have all these adjustment issues that are happening. But when you were finally able to see where he wanted to go in the future, which is kind of this vocational style of wanting to learn to be a mechanic, at least for now, right? If it changes later, then that's fine. But then now that was aligned, he was able to focus more, that behavior change again, right? That shift. So I think it comes up a lot in therapy for sure.
I think, I mean, you mentioned, it felt a lot of pressure, right? You mentioned the pressures of graduating and going to college. I think a lot of high school itself, I remember for myself, like there was always the pressure on getting into college. Like vocational training wasn't a thing. And if you did go to that or community college, it was kind of seen like you really didn't apply yourself, or it was
almost seen like a plan B type of thing.
You know, and so that was my biggest thing. And like with my clients now, I work with 18 and above, so I don't have high school per se. But in my prior with the state, yes, we did work with some high school students. But just explaining to them, like, if this is your interest, this is your route to go, and this is going to be the best option for you, because college, higher education, they're not going to focus cosmetology. You're not going to get that at San Jose State or San Francisco State. You might want to go to a professional salon school or whatever, right? A barber school, whatever.
Culinary school.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I can see like the schools themselves as a system applying some of that pressure, or you got to get your ACT scores, your PACT scores up so you can go to college and X, Y, and Z, right? So I think that plays a huge factor.
I think coming from like a private Jesuit high school, it was like instilled that you needed to go to college. Like it was like almost a culture, right? Like there was a culture of going to college, as opposed to maybe thinking differently and wanting to sort of explore these other kind of things, which are cool, you know, like in itself as well.
Yeah, but I think a big piece of that is a lot of privilege and the fact that we get into a system where, you know, you can't go any further or you're looked down upon if you go to a vocational school or if you go down to a community college. It's just the way the society's kind of worked around, you know, the system of like employment. Like you have to get a good job that's, you know, at least 6 figures while you're 22, and then you move on and buy yourself a house in the Bay Area, and all of this shit is unrealistic. I mean, I think for me and then the other kids we've worked with, as soon as they're like 17, 16, they're like, yeah, when I hit 18, I'm gonna move out and get my own place. Like, whoa, but slow down. When some people are like, yo, you're crushing his dreams. Like, no, I'm being realistic, because a lot of this stuff that, you know, let's be honest, school doesn't talk shit about employment other than like, unless you're in a specific magnet program, which I was in, but depends on which magnet program you're in, because they have only select focus. They'll tell you how to get a job, but that could vary on what kind of job. I was in a travel and tourism program, which only taught me how to get like a travel and tourism job, even though they weren't hiring kids that were 18. So when I showed up to Anchor Blue in like a, you know, button-up suit with a jacket and pants, and everybody else showed up in like a t-shirt and some jeans, I looked like a fucking weirdo. So employment doesn't need to be taught to younger kids a lot better. Yeah. But then from my experience, yeah, there's an aspect of privilege, emphasis on like getting into college. But then I also ran a youth employment program over the summer. I worked with teenagers, and a lot of, for them, it was like, I'm not even going to think about the future. Kind of like what John said. The future is just, I'm going to graduate, and that's it. And that's as far as I'm going to see. And some didn't have, you know, experience or knowledge of like beyond that, of like college, and then college, oh, what am I going to study? What am I going to look for? What job? So some of my work was like, okay, since I had this experience, trying to push that spark. Because, you know, 13, 14, they didn't have it. What job to look for? How do I get this experience? Job shadowing. What the fuck is that? You know, how do I find someone? How do I write this resume? How do I write a letter of like, hey, you know, I'm interested in this, or I'm interested in getting more information from people who have experience. You know, they don't have that experience. All they know is like, you know, my mom, my dad do this, and a lot of people kind of slide into those professions. But even though that's looked down upon, then that's kind of mixes up a lot of things. So looking back into that, it's definitely more work that I've brought, more experience that I've brought into my work with kids. And then with that, I've also, I currently have a license it's inactive and license in LPCC. So I've gotten experience and training in like job employment, career counseling. Can't necessarily use it with kids because they don't have jobs, but within that and talking to friends and, you know, using it on the side, I've been able to see and talk with people about like how getting a certain job, or how being in a position that they're passionate about, that it becomes more than work and more of a career, something that they actually enjoy, that opens doors up exponentially. Especially if we're talking about like a biopsychosocial model. I mean, or like Maslow's hierarchy, finding purpose within that, finding belonging, finding, you know, increased self-esteem.
Now you're talking about some long-term planning for sure, some future planning, like way out there in the future.
Exactly.
But you're right. I mean, vocational skills is going to be a huge part of that. Like no matter where people want to end up, whether it's a career that they can get after college or a career that they can get, you know, without college, it still comes down to, can you work? Right. And it also intersects too with mental work, or mental health, and that mental health can impact your work and how you go into work. But also, let's also take a little look at some of the heavy hitters out there too. Like sometimes it hurts when that work doesn't work out, you know, and some of our clients, you know, they dealing with that. They're dealing with their mental health, like maybe some depression and stuff. And then like this one path that they thought or were working towards, sometimes it doesn't work, you know. We could talk all the time about long-term planning and like these guys who get self-actualized, right? We're going to go back into Maslow, hierarchy of needs and all that, but sometimes that stuff doesn't work, and we see the look on our clients' faces. You know, it hits them hard.
I think, but in that sense, I don't think it's meant to be to like the solution. I think it's just to provide that foundation to help you explore yourself, right?
Yes.
For people who don't know what they want to do. I realized what I wanted to do. I wish I had a better structure. I wish like community college was pushed, because now that I look back on it, I was like, yo, I didn't have to pay for 2 years of school. I really didn't have to. I could have gone that way and then transferred, and then I would have wished it was better help on myself financially, you know. But I played football, so I didn't think about it like that. But other people didn't. I'm like, why wasn't that really pushed, you know? But I think something like that definitely provides a foundation of, right, is more self-exploration. You do this, you want to do that, and you will learn along the way if this is what you really want to do. And even with adults now, 30, 40, 50 years old, you see that, you know, for what years of experience, years of, you know, X, Y, and Z abuse of a drug or whatever, or mental disability, like they feel crushed that that side of what they wanted to do didn't work. Like I had a guy today who wanted to be a civil engineer and doesn't have a degree in anything, but he thought that's what he wanted to do, and he just feels depleted. You know, so working with him on that, on trying to come up with alternative solutions, is a process. But yeah,
Absolutely, man. I've had a long-term client too, where this kid, well, you know, he's 19 now, but he's been struggling with moving forward because he has a chronic medical condition. You know, somebody who has a shortened future, someone who has a physical disability at this point, right? Like you're moving forward, you know, in your life, and you're becoming a young man and becoming this young adult. You know, you're 18, you're graduating from high school, and then boom, you get hit with something like this. You know, it's hard for people out there.
Mm-hmm. Or even to say like mental health can have the opposite effect, like the work or the inability to attain that job affects your mental health, because that's some like either you're going through a grieving process is kind of what you're saying, Jeremy. Mm-hmm. Of just like, this is what I always want to be. This is what I felt I would excel in and what I would be happy with doing. And the fact that I can't have that or I can't obtain that is just, it's lost upon me. Now I have to start all over and figure out this new path of where to go, what to do, and myself. And and how does that tie into my sense of self? What does that say about me now? Mm-hmm. Right, John? Mm-hmm. You don't drop some existentialism?
Where's that identity right there? You know, that identity crisis again? Like when I got to reinvent myself again? You know? Like you're talking about this dude that you were working on, right? Who wanted to be a civil engineer, and then that path just didn't work. So now you got to go back to the drawing board and like, who am I? Asking yourself that question, that existential, what is my path forward now that I have changed or that I must change, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think like with employment too, you get definitely into these like distortions of all or nothing. Like either I'm going to be this or that's it. I'm going to be a singer or that's it. And I'm going to be a professional basketball player and that's it. Mm-hmm. But there's no like outside categories within that. With the music is so broad. But I know so many kids and so many people that I've talked to, like, oh, if I can't make it a singer, that's it. Like, no, like, you could be an engineer, you can make beats, you can, write songs, you can like, there's millions of ways you can get paid for music.
Music, yeah.
But like, they just see this pinhole, like this all or nothing.
Yeah, I mean, there's major factors into all of it. You know, if you got support from your family, if you got support from your friends, if you have the drive to really push for it, right? I think there's a lot of support systems that affect someone's at a younger age. Like now, I'm like, all right, if something didn't work, all right, I think I'm in the mental space to be like, okay, what am I going to do next? I might, be down on myself for a few days, but I don't think it'll take over me to like affect everything personal in my life. But you're talking about someone in high school, right? Who I think you mentioned a couple weeks ago that you had this one person who's so set on going to school, this one particular school, and she's not considering anything else, right? So
It was like Yale or community college.
that's a big thing, a big difference. But
We're talking like Ivy League school, like nationally ranked. Like we're talking tops of the tops, or
Exception rate of like what, like 20.
3%.
but I mean, not to
Something
push
like
anything
that.
on like negatively, but that's a great ambition, right? But if it doesn't work out, she probably hasn't had that plan B sit down with her family or with herself or with John or anyone else. So I think that's the central problem that I see is
This boomer bust mentality.
this like lack of self-efficacy. Like especially at a younger age. I mean, how do you become aware of that at a younger age? And then as you develop, it might take another forms.
Well, I reflect on my own experience and what that has looked like, knowing that like when I went to college, I immediately went in with a psychology degree, right? And I wanted to do that. As soon as I was in my senior year, I knew that I wanted to go into a counseling program. It was far on, but something that changed was when I actually finished my degree early and I got to delve into music. And that was where I was sort of like, okay, I started to learn about audio engineering. I kind of realized I wasn't going to be the next fucking, Tiesto. But at the end of the day, it was that moment of I'm exploring, but then it was kind of like a scary moment too, because I kind of broadened my own perspective and saw like, well, like there are these other alternatives. What if I don't go to counsel? What if I don't go to a graduate program? Like, what kind of work am I going to do? How am I going to apply these skills that I have? What kind of skills do I have? Do I have any like administrative skills? I think I have labor skills. I've worked, with alongside my brother painting and fucking, hustling like that.
And that's even a structure that you were exposed to during your childhood development. I think that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Like what were we exposed to in a childhood development? Like how do we start asking ourselves a question of what was I good at? What am I good at?
I think it's like that internal resume, right? You kind of go into your head and you're just kind of like, what kind of experiences have I had? What am I going to be like? How am I going to be applying this? And not only how, but like what's the process to do it, right? How do I maneuver this system as well, and try to essentially get by. I think to you, Maya's point earlier on, there is a huge sense of privilege and kind of that generational kind of passing of knowledge and being able to share. I think for me, the person that instilled the education system was my mom, but she had no education, until her education was up until high school. But she was kind of that spark, right? But I can see some of my families where that's not really in their realm right now. For them, they're just kind of trying to just get through the next paycheck,
Right.
and that's their vocational that they're trying to get to. Just trying to get a job to provide. I just need to kind of quickly acquire these skills right now.
And I think, again, to Maya's point, I think the biggest teacher would be reality, getting smacked in the face, and then coming back and be like, all right, I need to reassess what I'm doing, because that's going to be a biggest teacher is like life, and going through those steps.
True. But at the same time, these are all skills or attributes that are just things that like some people just don't have or didn't have the opportunity to build. Like, I mean, if we talk about like education and academic success, some families never had that. And so for a parent to give that then to their kid is something that's untouchable. That's going to be hard for them to figure out. Like, if I don't have $1 million, John, I can't. If you're my son, I can't teach you how to make $1 million.
And they only got a therapist that's telling it once a week. That's selling some kind of message about that, maybe
Right.
once a week, but that's it.
Let alone talking about like how do we instill grit? Like how do you form grit? How you you pull yourself up, you get smacked in the face, you
Resiliency.
carry on.
Mm-hmm.
if it's maybe I can teach that because it's just of life, and if I never created the skill to like take lessons, take my experiences, and morph them into something more and take lessons by it, then I can do that. But if I've had like a family of history of abuse where we don't talk about our problems, we don't reflect, we just move on, then that's a hard attribute to pass down to you.
It could potentially become a risk factor, right? Like it could potentially become something that is detrimental then, because your decision-making skills are then impaired, right? Or something about that. Or maybe not impaired, but maybe you just haven't really had that opportunity, right? You're just limited. I like to think of it as like your chance for success is lower, right? It's not necessarily that you are going to, you do have to hold accountability, right? But
I mean, it's not impossible. You can definitely make it work.
Right.
It's just going to take a lot of resilience.
Yeah, exactly.
As part of that resilience, I think two of the terms that I like to use a lot when I'm explaining this type of stuff to clients is, because obviously like we can be like, this is real life shit, but the psychobabble way of saying it is just natural consequences, right? And then realistic expectations, exploring these things through a set number of times, until, they start carving their own selves.
Well, here's something for you guys, because I know right now Jeremy's obviously working in the vocational field, and both John and Jeremiah, both of you are in this IOP program. And from the clinical perspective, the day of your intake, you're looking for, when you're assessing, you're looking for impairment, right? You're looking for significant, impairment where. How can you kind of address that mental health issue? But have you ever come across a client where maybe there isn't an impairment and maybe you didn't have to open them, but maybe they could have benefited from some rehabilitation skills, right? Learning some communication skills along the way, maybe just to boost their self-efficacy. You didn't necessarily have a mental health problem, but they couldn't receive services because they didn't have an impairment that you can give them.
Well, not only is that a good question, but also looking at it from a different lens, right? We go back to Jay, our host here, who is the only non-therapist in the room, right? We're on Therapy House, but Jay, maybe now would be a great time to talk about kind of what you do, to support these people, because those are the people without services too, right? They're not in therapy.
Well, to get the services that I help provide, we have to get a referral from an agency, right? To say this person is physically or mentally disabled, and whatever, diagnosed. But to get us, so that's number one. Number two would be to do the intake. Once they are eligible, to do the intake and create a case. And they filling out a bunch of papers, right? A lot of the early on stages is sorting papers and making sure that we have everything we need. But in that process, they're going through their employment history, and as they write down a lot of their employment, I'm asking questions as to what led to this, obviously you leaving, or what happened to you moving on. Like what was the reason for you to get this new position? And if there's these gaps in employment, obviously I try to take more out of that information. I try to poke and ask more questions, because clients are only going to give you what you ask. I feel like if you don't ask enough questions, they're only going to tell you what they want you to know. And for me to be as best as I possibly can, I have to ask those tough questions. And so. At the job now that I'm at, we have a work assessment program. And so before we can actually look for work in the community, we refer them into this work assessment program. We have a big ass warehouse where they can do shipping and receiving, right? They have all these employers that they are partnered with, and they help assemble a lot of their items, their products, and then they ship them out. And so in that process, whether it's for 4 months, 6 months, or a year, they're learning, they're adjusting, they're working with others, they're getting the supervision and they're working on the discipline that they needed to work on, along with their mental health and however else that helps them. But
Right, they're keeping that structure, that consistency, right? That
Yeah.
trying to keep that maintenance.
yeah,
We call
and
it
so before
behaviorism.
they can come to me and we actually help with like competitive employment in the community, I have to get reports from those the work assessment supervisors stating this person that they believe this person is ready for work. Like we can't move on without those statements, right? So there's a whole like process before we can actually sit down, get the resume going, cover letter, interview ready, all that. But the rehabilitation process again, it's exactly that. You can take 2 steps forward, 10 steps back in a heartbeat. And we understand that working with clients who either are homeless, who've been in the jail system, or who just have a mental diagnosis, that any of these external factors can be a big hindrance to getting employment. And then actually getting the job, we have to retain the job. So
That's that maintenance again.
yeah, that's like you help them with we can help them with we can provide a job coach that can go on site with them and then be 100% hands on, and then over the time decrease the amount of percentage they're on with. But we have that, and then we have another side of supportive employment. So there's a lot of variety in where I'm at as to how we can help someone get in or get a job and just get the rehabilitation side of it going. But again, like I mentioned, any day you take those steps forward, you take in 10 back in a heartbeat. So I have to have the patience. I understand it, and so I have to have the patience and be like, this is my job in helping this person find employment, keep it. That way they don't no longer need our services. Another issue I feel like is some people, they have SSDI, all right, and they can only make a certain amount to keep SSDI. If they make more than a certain amount, those services stop, right? So they don't want to get off those services, right? If they don't have a significant disability, who obviously someone can benefit from, I personally feel like that it's only a temporary assistance that they don't need forever, right? If you claiming to me that you want to be self-sufficient and you want to be financially stable, okay, if you're on that, fine. Let me help you get off of that. That way, someone else who actually needs it can benefit from it. But a lot of people don't want to get off of it, and so they want to stick into the part-time rotation, X amount of dollars, and so that's kind of hard of mentally, but once they get a job, part-time, full-time, that's it, and they retain. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a quota-based thing, so we don't typically have any deadlines. So I think that's the good thing around it, because I would be frustrated if there was a deadline and you got to meet certain numbers and blah, blah, blah. But obviously it does look better if they do get a job and more frequently, but there are no specific like timeline deadlines to get everything in and get them jobs and stuff.
Well, I think like you mentioned, there is that sense of when you're also constantly self-exploring, right? When you're also constantly trying to also figure out your situation or like kind of where you're at. I can imagine when you have these other factors, right? You got bills to pay, you got, your needs to fulfill. It can be a whole fucking mess, because you're constantly evaluating yourself, your skills, but at the same time you kind of see where you can go, and I can imagine it can feel like a bind, like when I was hearing you talk and how people take 1 step forward, 10 steps back. It is that bind of like, shit, what do I want to do? What kind of skills do I have? And you're constantly just asking yourself that question. You're almost constantly just so much lost in the exploration process that where do you ground yourself in?
Well, it definitely is discouraging, because if you're dealing with clients who are committed 100%, like you'll get clients committed 100%, won't give you any issues, apply, interview, and everything, but the employer isn't hiring them, right? So they repeat this process of going, interview, getting ready, getting excited, and not getting the call. And so
That's where we need that systemic change.
that's that discouraging part of on their end. And why am I doing this? Nobody wants me, and blah blah blah. Like trying, and then the discussion of maybe having going to training isn't appealing because they can't commit the time to a training school like to get that extra right now. They need the money.
Exactly.
And I totally understand it. And that's not everyone's situation, but that's hard to handle. You see someone who's really committed and doing everything, and then they just.
Well, I think that just comes to the point that circling back to the initial question that I asked John and Jeremiah, because in our program, the first episode, I'm sorry, not the first, the second episode for Therapy House was about prevention. And one thing that I feel like is essentially like a privilege is we can open clients that don't necessarily have an impairment. We have the capacity, and it's not the perfect system. It's a short-term program. Maximum is about 6 months that you would get the services. Although, I've had clients, and, ARCC, if you're out there, it's all good, it's all for the good of the client. I've had clients open, for more than a year in a rehabilitation program, not necessarily receiving therapy, but just trying to be consistent, trying to develop that resiliency, trying to develop just the communication skills to talk about your experience, to self-explore without really having, some type of underlying depression, but very well knowing that there's a risk factor, right? This is a low-income family, maybe they're going through homelessness. How can you just provide that consistency so that they can be resilient and essentially face whatever they need to do in the future? That's the part where I see rehabilitation doesn't always have to be, trying to recover from something, but you're kind of have that foresight as a clinician to be like, let's practice this. This is important right now. It's not school. It's not, but they're life lessons. Let's do it.
Thanks again, everybody, for tuning into Therapy House. Here to remind you to check out our Linktree at Linktree/therapy_house. There you can find all the links for our podcast website, the different platforms that we are broadcasting on, individual links to our personal pages. Like, comment, rate, and review our podcast so that we can grow. And of course, subscribe so that you'll be the first to know when we drop something new. Until then, we'll see you next time.